be virtual, and we will send you those links. We just forgot to do that on the announcement slide, but they will be Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You can come any or all of those days and times. And again, we'll break out in groups, we'll do a discipline, whatever y'all want to do, but we just want to give you an opportunity to practice planning more and to get feedback and kind of really practice it with actual content next week. And then also, we want you to utilize the SI rooms as much as possible to maybe even hang out with other facilitators or mentors. Some of you will have SI sessions in these two rooms that are listed, which is Nesbitt in Gainesville, 1213, or Stewart 269. So 269 is directly across the hall from 245 in Dahlonega, which is where the current biweekly is being held in person. So feel free to use that space. It is small, but it will be set up soon with Zoom. You can plan in there. If there's nothing else going on, you can hang out, whatever. There's going to be a facilitator manual in there that you can use that has, CLTs and everything. And then session materials, everything from basketballs, little mini basketballs, to like ping pong balls and other materials for whatever you might want to use for session. Anything else in regards to that? Am I missing anything with the SI rooms? All righty. We listed our mentor office hours again on the announcement slide, and you got all of those links in the newsletter. I'm sure we'll put those in again. So just join via Zoom. Those are all virtual. No matter what group you're in, you can attend any of these office hours and drop in, ask questions, all that good stuff. All right, so events. We are doing Zoom workshops today. There was one at 9 o'clock this morning. There will be one right after. We're calling it a workshop, but it's really you just kind of playing around with Zoom, getting it set up, practicing it for your first week of sessions next week. And then picnic in the park is planned for September. That's our first official cross-campus event that we wanted to plan out. So go ahead and mark your calendars. That will be fun. I'm sure we'll do it somewhere somewhat centrally located at the lake or something maybe. And probably around 5 o'clock or 6 in the evening. And then we had an error on the birthdays. Aaron's birthday is not the 6th. It's the 19th, I believe. Sarah can correct me if I'm wrong, but we do have a birthday coming up for Aaron. We just thought it was coming up before the next biweekly. That was incorrect, so we apologize for that. And I know we have at least one more birthday, I think Jared, in September as well, but we will announce those again. So happy early birthday. That is it from me. Oh, other housekeeping items. This is our first biweekly, so we want to say, please participate in biweeklies, engage with each other, ask questions, don't be scared to speak up. If you're online, unless you're having technical difficulties, use your camera, be present, all of that good stuff. All right, I'm turning it over.
Awesome. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. Like Emily said, this biweekly is essentially not going to be like the rest of biweeklies. It's essentially just like a continuation of training, things that we didn't get to, or things that you may not see as often, come into contact as often, that kind of thing. So to start us off, bonus hours. So a lot of you have maybe heard bonus hours. If you're a new facilitator, you've been hearing a lot about them. We've always been saying don't worry about them, we'll get to them. This is us getting to them. So bonus hours, you're going to hold one bonus hour every week. And then so it's different from sessions. So you're going to stay for the entire hour for a bonus hour. So if you don't have any students come, that's when a great time to be looking through your SI resources, the manual, talking with your mentors about attendance strategies, just finding a way to work on SI related things, get involved with some leadership books, that kind of thing. Just really doing something leadership or SI focused, but hopefully you're going to have attendance at those, right? So hopefully that won't be an issue, but if you don't, no matter what, you're staying for the full hour. And then it's really easy with bonus hours, just because they're a lot less formal, you aren't planning for them. So it's a lot less formal. So it's a lot easier to kind of not use the SI model, but you just need to keep that in the back of your mind. Like, yes, I may only have one student, but that does not mean like I am now a tutor. You are still an SI leader. So we want to see you using the 3 elements in collaboration. So if you have multiple students, a lot of times like office hours, they'll come with specific problems. And so if you have multiple students, maybe they have separate problems that they are having some trouble with, need some help understanding. It's a great, easy way to get them working together. So collaboration, redirection, wait time, checks for understanding, all still very important in an office hour, even though it's a lot less structured, a lot less planned. It'll feel more natural to kind of want to go towards that more tutoring type vibe. But just remember, like, that's not what we do. We have our model and our model works, so we use it for a reason. All right. So some good and great ideas when it comes to bonus hours. So good ideas include letting the students bring specific questions. So it's like, hey, if you're having any trouble with a specific topic, or if you're really struggling like with this one type of question, come on to bonus hour, we'll help you get through it. Going over past session topics that students weren't able to attend. So if you have a student who is like, I would really love to come to your Monday session, but like I have work, so I'll never be able to make it. Cool, not an issue. Come to my bonus hour and we can work through the problems that I have, everything that I had prepared for that Monday session together. Finding that way to like, all right, like you weren't able to make a session, but like you can still get the session materials by like putting in that effort of like coming to office hour. We don't want to like just be like, here's all of our hard work, right? They need to be putting in that effort. So that's a great way to get that going. So continuing a worksheet or other materials that you weren't able to complete in session. I know this happened to me a lot. I would plan what I thought was like this great worksheet, like, maybe even only like 4 problems, and then plot twist, we would only get to like 2 problems, right? So this is a great time to be like, hey, because we're all gonna be great facilitators. We're gonna be on track of our time management. So we're gonna say like, hey, we're gonna have to cut this activity short right here. But if you come to my bonus hour, we can continue to work on these problems that we didn't get to. And then some of our great ideas are working with the instructor or on your own to come up with more difficult problems. So a way to get attendance for bonus hours that we've seen be successful in the past is really advertise it as like, this is going to be our time to really dive deep into those like multi-stage, like hard, difficult problems, like problems that may take like 30 minutes to like the full hour to work on. We've seen a lot of, especially biology facilitators, kind of bring in like MCAT questions. Like these are the questions that like, if you're studying for the MCAT, like these are the kinds of questions. They may be relying on like other material, like from a different class that we aren't doing right now. So like these are those difficult questions. So that's a great way to get people in. And so kind of on that, like reviewing prereq material. So for our chemistry facilitators, if you're in 1212, the ACS is going to have that 1211 material on it. So making like, you can be like, hey, in my bonus hour, like that's a great time to come review this material that's going to be on your final that you haven't seen in a semester now. Or like I said, biology, if you're having some of those chemistry foundations, like if you're struggling, if you have students struggling with that, like this is an opportunity to like help them with that. So for all of our English people, you can also do like workshops on upcoming papers or assignments. And then you can also, this is a great time to kind of, especially because you'll have students just kind of come in and be like, hi, I'm struggling with blank. And you're like, cool, I don't have anything planned. Do you have specific questions? And they're like, no. It's like, I'm just struggling with it. And so this is a great time to go onto Teams and look through all those facilitator files. I'm working on getting those uploaded. But yeah, so a great time to kind of go through those. So if you do have a student who's like, I'm struggling with this, need some help with that, go to Teams. We have files on like everything. And then this is also a good time to just kind of familiarize yourself with Teams if like you're waiting on a student to show up, that kind of thing. Anything I miss from bonus hours? Anybody? Yes, accounting, I love it. Cool. If not, we will continue on. So real quick, we just wanted to kind of go through, kind of review like your first steps when you get into session, like what should you be doing? So ideally, like in the most perfect ideal world, you would be able to get to session early and your room will be open. Obviously, that's not going to happen every time. Like we have classes, there are classes in the room, there will be session in the room before, but ideally you want to try your best to get there early so you can just have that time. I know I always got a little overwhelmed when I would get there like right at the time it was supposed to start, and then I would be like frantically trying to get everything going. So do yourself a favor, if you can get there early, get there early. So once you get into the room, what you're going to want to do is pull up UNG Connect. And once you're on UNG Connect, what I would do is go ahead and go to your event, because on your event, that's where you're going to be checking people in for session. That's also going to have your Zoom link. So I would go ahead, open your Zoom link, and just make sure that camera, mics, speakers, that kind of thing is working. Big thing with technology this semester is, you know, technology is going to not treat us well at some point this semester. Like, it's just going to happen. So we are going to be very adaptable as facilitators this semester. So with that, we just wanted to make it clear, like, obviously, like, do your best, try your best to get like this technology working, that kind of thing, but don't spend an excessive amount of time on that. Like, if you have students in front of you, like, and they're just sitting there and you're like, hold on, like, I'm trying to figure all this out. It's like, it's a waste of their time. And it could be a waste of your time if like the camera literally just isn't connected or something, like it's not going to work. So don't spend like an excessive amount of time. Like if you can't figure out something in like 5 minutes, if you have your own like personal laptop, want to pull that up, just try your best and just focus on the students that you have like directly in front of you, and then see what you can do for those who may be joining online. And then so after that, you'll want to, I always like to pull up my planning. So after that, I would pull up my planning, pull up any of the resources that I was going to use for that session, just to make sure I'm all good to go. And hopefully around that time, you'll have some students start showing up. So you'll check yourself into session. Never forget to check yourself into session. Always check yourself into session. And then you'll also want to start checking your students into session. And then by the time you're done with that, it should be opening activity time. Do you have any questions, comments, concerns? Chat's popping off. Teams. Okay, nothing about this. Any questions about this before we move on? Cool. All righty. So something you may run into, double sessions. Double sessions are great. They are like essentially a super long session. So sessions are typically 50 minutes, an hour. I like to say an hour, but you know, 50 minutes. But so a double session is essentially double that. So it's like a 2-hour session. They are great for test reviews. As you know, we don't like to hold any sessions, anything like that, within 48 hours of a test. So like, let's say your class has a test on Thursday and you have Monday, Wednesday sessions. So you would submit a reschedule request to cancel your Thursday session and then hold a double session on Monday. And then once that's approved, you can announce to your class like, hey, holding a double session. And these are great because like we were saying earlier, a lot of times there's a lot of material to cover, especially for when a test is coming up. Like we want to make sure we're preparing our students. So it can be very easy to get like, okay, they need to know all of this. And then like you start doing it, and it's like, oh, we got through a quarter of that. And then when you hold a second session, it can be like, all right, let's review what we did. And then it's like, you don't even get like halfway through. So this double session really gives you that time to kind of dive deeper, get into more different, get into more topics than you typically would in like necessarily 2 1-hour sessions. And so, yeah, and then also don't be afraid to collaborate with people on your team. There may be a chance that you are facilitating for like same course and same professor as someone else. So if y'all are doing that, definitely like if you have a test coming up, collaborate with them, talk with them, see like what their ideas are. And this is also just for normal sessions. Talk with people, see what they're doing. And that's why we do observations as well. So yes, double sessions. Anybody have anything? Check the chat. Any other double sessions, thoughts, comments? Any questions about double sessions?
Like, what if you don't have the time in your schedule to do a double session, like on before the test?
Yeah, so the beginning of the question was, what do you do if like you don't have time, like a 2-hour block to hold a double session? So what you would do is, if like that situation earlier, if you have a test Thursday sessions, Monday, Wednesday, you would just submit a reschedule request, and like for your Wednesday session to be held like Tuesday. That way you're still holding your 1-hour sessions. And then that gives you like time to prepare for the test. And then also like that will allow them to have that 48-hour window before the test where it's not cramming, because cramming is not good and we don't encourage it, which is why we don't do sessions within 48 hours.
Yeah, and Oscar, just so that everybody knows, doubles are not required. It's not a requirement. You can hold your normal sessions throughout the entire semester. It's just an option. And sometimes students really like that option. I hear a lot from facilitators that they actually like the option because they do have more time to kind of focus in on a larger amount of material without having to break it up. So we're just giving that option again. It is not a requirement though. So if you don't have time in your schedule, don't worry about it. They're studying on their own as well, so they're good.
Any other thoughts, questions?
So for double sessions, are we doing that like one opening, a bunch of mains and a closing, or opening, main, closing, opening?
I would typically, whenever I held doubles, I would do like one opening and then some like bigger, chunkier mains and then a closing. Just because like when you think about like main contents, you can kind of like, you may have to kind of sprinkle in like a main here and there, just because like when we think like opening content, like, you know, getting their feet wet, kind of introducing the content, it can be a lot to introduce at once. So maybe you do like an opening and then like a main activity, and then another activity is kind of more introducing, like not necessarily like calling it an opening, but like putting it in like your main content type planning.
Yeah, and that can't talk. People used to do, way back when we did doubles many moons ago, that we used to see a lot of Jeopardy, like a lot of these like larger review games that take more time. So they would use a double session to go through a Jeopardy game that maybe is going to take 45 minutes. You're not going to do that during a normal session. So doubles just look a little bit different. They really are for those for those more meaty reviews. Again, you always want to make sure that you have an opening and you have a closing. But there's not a like set structure other than your opening and closing. You could have 3 mains. You could have one, you know, longer Jeopardy type review that takes an hour. It's you know, there's differences.
Also, if anyone is interested in Jeopardy, we have a template for that. So don't go and make your own. We have that resource. And then also what we saw a lot with double sessions in the past was like a longer closing, because, you know, we typically say spend about 10 minutes on an opening and 10 minutes on a closing, but that's for a 50-minute session. So you might have like a 15-minute closing because you've got a lot to kind of wrap up and check for final understanding. So just some things to note when you're holding and planning these double sessions.
Yeah, that was something I was going to say. When like you're planning these double sessions, like be thinking like, all right, like I covered a lot more material than I would typically in a session. So like my closing is obviously going to have to look different, or like my opening may look different because I'm planning to cover a lot more material. So just be prepared for that, be thinking about that when you're planning for this. Moving along. So next up, we're just going to go over some like expectations and start off with setting boundaries with students, because It's a very important thing. So we just want to make sure that is very clear going forward. So we don't want to give out any personal contact information to our students. Every time it happens, it feels like we always hear the horror story of like, these people, my students won't leave me alone. So it's really, it's really good for you and them. It's getting them to kind of take ownership of their own academics, their own learning, and it's giving you the space and availability to kind of say like, all right, I'm gonna step away, like this is my time to focus on me, whether that be self-care, friends, my own studies, that kind of thing. It just really helps out with that kind of thing. And like our students, they don't mean to be like, they're trying to be like annoying or anything, but like they are sometimes just worried and they're panicking at 3 a.m. and they just want to call you because they don't understand. And everything at 3 a.m. is just a tragedy. It's like, it's not. And so we are here to help our students learn and grow and empower them to take ownership of their own learning. So when you are talking with your students, you always want to tell them like what you can and can't do. And we'll kind of go into this a little more, but essentially like, explain what you're doing in session. Just like being upfront with them, like, okay, I know like in your typical learning environment, like most of you have grown up in this environment where like you ask a question, it immediately gets answered, or, but like that's not how sessions work. I am not going to give you answers. I am going to look at you when you ask me questions. It's called wait time. And just being able to kind of like explain like essentially our model, like the why we do things the way we do them, and just letting them know like it's for your benefit. Like our model is like what sets us apart from other like academic support type services. And like that's what really sets us apart. And like we have the data to prove like our model works, like what we're doing works. It's just very different. It can be frustrating for students, especially if they're new to SI. Don't meet with them outside of session or bonus hours. So especially right now in the beginning, classes are going good. It's syllabus week. Like we don't have too much on our plates, right? Maybe. I'm not in that boat personally, but some people are. And so it's a lot easier for us like right now to be like, oh yeah, like I want to help you. Like I'm here to help you. Like, yeah, like I can meet you outside of my session or bonus hour, but that is going to be very problematic in a few weeks when it's around midterm time and you have 3 midterms and 2 papers due and your students are like, you've been meeting with me outside of session these past couple of weeks. Like, what do you mean? Like, you can't do this? Like, no. Like you are essentially teaching them to, once again, take ownership of their own learning. And this is going to get them on their own, like, this will be like a way to keep our schedule consistent. Like they'll have this consistent study time with you. They'll understand like, all right, this is the amount of time I need to be taking outside of that study time with the facilitator. So that's just gonna help with that boundary. That way students are like, what do you mean halfway through you're gonna stop helping me? So you may have to help your students define or redefine what success means to them. So for some of our students, like I facilitated for math. Some of my like math students, they were, ready to go to like computer science, continue on in math. Others were only taking it because they literally had to because of core requirements. And so success for someone who is just taking this class for like a core requirement may look very different than success for someone who is looking to go into that field. So just kind of get to know your students and learn like what success in this course means for them and how you can help them through that. Like if you have a student who is like an art major and you are facilitating for math, like odds are good they aren't trying to learn the deeper meaning, like how this applies in different areas. Like they are just probably looking to know the basics, like to get them through the class. So like trying to like dive deeper into like these difficult problems with them, great, may help them understand it more, but that might not be what they're looking for. So once again, get to know your students, learn what success means to them, and be thinking about like how you can help them be successful. All that being said, we are not responsible for our students' success. We are here to help all of our students in our class, but ultimately it is their education, it is their academics. We can, hold our SI sessions. We can do great. It can be very disheartening when it's like man, I've been doing like so good. Like my students are, I have my regulars, they're coming every session, and then they get a test back and they're like, I failed. Like it's very easy to kind of be like, oh, like I must be doing bad because they failed, but they've been coming to me for help and they're failing. It's like this weird, like, it's mine. But really, like, if you are following the SI model, if you are planning, keeping everything that we've taught you and trained you on, like in your head, and really trying and like I said, using the model, ultimately that's all you can be doing. It's the student's responsibility to, once again, like take ownership of their own academics. We aren't going to be there on test days to like hold their hands and like guide them through it. And so, you know, it's really up to them. It's a good thing to tell them, like, yes, this is consistent study time for you, but you may need to be spending, and probably do need to be spending, more time outside of just SI sessions studying for this class. So ultimately, it is their responsibility, it is their education, and so we are not responsible for that. And so then also you just want to determine what's comfortable for you and what's comfortable for your students. Some students may come in like extremely shy, like they won't say a single word your first session, like it can be real weird. Other students are gonna be like not screaming, but like, you know, having a good time, ready for a party. So get to know your students, what they're comfortable with. And I would just say, especially for those students who may be a little more shy, like push them in a safe way. Like, all right, like, you know, you may be afraid to speak in front of the whole class, but can you go up to the board and like write one word? You know, push them in a safe way so they can continue to grow and be a part of sessions, but make sure they're also like comfortable. Another thing I think, especially like with this semester, if you have students in person, like if you're putting them into groups, making sure they're comfortable with their spacing. So like some students may like exclusively want to be staying like 6 feet away from others. Other people may be good like getting close to each other. So just making sure like, and like same with you, like do what you're comfortable with. Obviously, like don't become complacent, but stay comfortable, push yourself to grow in different areas, but remain comfortable. Don't feel like you have to do something that is just like extremely uncomfortable. Talk with mentors, admin team, which kind of leads us to this last point. Like, never in doubt, if there's something weird going on, just let us know. We've probably had that situation before. We've been doing this for a while, and we can help you through it. Any questions?
There was a question on the virtual chat.
Yes.
Can you answer questions on GroupMe or email outside of hours? And I would say within reason, of course, and you know, some of that could be included in your max hours, like especially if you're talking to students in their D2L, what is it called? When there's like groups or discussion boards, stuff like that. But just them reaching out to ask you questions, just remember that you could answer a lot of those if they're coming to session. So maybe you can kind of redirect them, right? If there's a lot of questions they're asking, especially asking you like they would be asking a tutor, just remember your role again. And us just answering questions about material is not necessarily going to help them in their learning process from the perspective we're coming from. So we want to say, hey, we can talk about those questions in the next SI session, or remind them when those are, stuff like that. So if there's a way you can redirect, great. Otherwise, you might want to ask them to come to bonus hour, whatever. Or if you feel it's appropriate, you can answer a simple question, that sort of thing. But just, again, remember what you're there to help them with and what that role looks like.
Yeah, and I had a question this morning about like students asking about like a specific project that maybe the professor doesn't really want you working on, but they're just asking like little details about it. I would go ahead and say, if you don't know already, find out what your faculty's office hours are, because that's a wonderful thing to kind of refer them back to. And just say, you know, I don't really have the details on that. I'm not really working on that with you guys. However, Dr. So-and-so is awesome. They have, and they have office hours on these days, or you can email them to set up a separate appointment. and just like refer them back to the faculty, especially if they're like class related emails. And so always good to kind of encourage them to go to their faculty member when they can.
So we will continue on. So these are just some of our like community agreements. We aren't going to go through and like read each one. Just wanted to spend like a few seconds on each of these 2 slides. So read through these, skim through them, because like I said, we're just going to spend a few seconds here, and then I'll show you this document that has all of these and goes into more detail is on Teams, and I'll show you that in just a second. So these are like those things to kind of think about, like, would a student really like be expecting this? These are great things to go over with your students, be thinking about like in your in session, like, am I doing those community agreements? So just kind of having these in like the back of your head. And then also we have like an abbreviated version of this kind of spread out in our different SI rooms. So like if you see any of these like community agreements, it's essentially a very condensed version of all of those, just hanging around in SI rooms so that people are aware, like, this is what's happening, this is what's going on. So GroupMe is our next thing. So first of all, if you want, you can go ahead and do this right now. Go ahead and add your mentors to your class GroupMe. This is just so we can kind of monitor, make sure nothing fishy or weird is happening. Also, like that way we have another form of contact, like if something were to happen, like you can't get in contact with your students. The mentors are in this GroupMe, so they'll be able to send a message, that kind of thing. You should be able to add them as long as you're in that big SI group, you have at least one group with them. So you should be able to add them just by searching their name. Yes.
I made a GroupMe and only 4 students joined it. So what do I do about that?
Yep, I would say keep pushing your GroupMe. There are going to be students who don't join, but those students are still your students. We'll talk about that in just a second. But yeah, so just make sure you are adding your mentors. That is going to be a requirement. Mentors are probably going to have them on mute. That way they aren't getting notifications all the time. But they'll just kind of help you keep monitoring all those. So with your GroupMe, you also want to make sure you are communicating appropriately. So you want to make sure you're keeping in mind those boundaries that you are setting with your students. GroupMe is a really easy way for them to have that easy contact with you, to like just shoot you a quick question of like, hey, I'm stuck on this problem, can you help me? So just remember those boundaries that you're setting within your, like with your students. And just think about like when you're sending out announcements and reminders, like don't be that person sending out a reminder at like 3 in the morning because your students are gonna be like, you woke me up, like what the heck, dude? So just make sure you're sending those out like at appropriate times. Memes and emojis are great. Think about like what would draw you into session. Told at 8 a.m. like search for like a Zoom meme for like 20 minutes last night. I couldn't find one, so I just sent the message in our GroupMe. So yeah, just be thinking about that. Make sure like, y'all are all adults, hopefully like appropriate language, that kind of thing, keeping it professional, but also like in keeping it professional, you can also be fun. So memes, emojis, all that, they're all great. And so kind of like what I was saying earlier, like GroupMe is not the only place to be announcing your sessions. Like you should not be only announcing session times, bonus hours, that kind of thing in GroupMe, because inevitably some of your students aren't going to join GroupMe. Like you just have those students who aren't. However, those students are still your students. So make sure you're posting it on D2L where everybody is, or making those classroom announcements every day if your professor allows that. Make sure you're communicating everything with all of your students, not just your students in your GroupMe. And so like that's also just in case like if any like last minute things need to happen, obviously notify like supervisor, and we'll work on like getting that out to everybody, that kind of thing. Anything to add, anybody?
Yeah, I had a question.
Go ahead.
How would you suggest we introduce our mentors to our students, like in the GroupMe or in class?
Yeah, I would just say like when you add them into the GroupMe, you can just be like, hey everybody, like I added my mentors in the group me. They're just gonna be here. They'll never really say anything. And then the only other times like your students may see mentors is if they come in to observe, or senior leaders to like observe a session. So if you're being observed by somebody, you can just, I would always just kind of start off, be like, hey, that's my mentor, Sydney. Like, she's just here to like observe me. Like, she's not gonna be a part of anything, just ignore her. And like mentors, senior leaders, they're gonna be sitting like in the back, like being quiet, like they're not gonna say anything, they're gonna be involved. So it's really easy. And then once you get sessions started, the students typically forget about them. That's my experience at least.
There is also on Teams the session expectations that you will be able to give to your SI students. And there is actually one point, number 11, that says mentors are experienced facilitators who may attend session to observe and give feedback to the facilitator. They are not there to critique student performance or report anything observed. Mentors sit in the back of the room and will not participate in session. So that just kind of gives a way for you to introduce the mentor. I suggest giving this participant copy of expectations to anybody who comes to your session, including new people throughout the semester. It's just a good front and back page document so they understand kind of like what SI is and what our expectations are. And it explains a lot of little things like that. So great question. And
we'll
I'm going to
those-
have copies. We're going to have copies in the SI rooms that you can come grab, you know, a handful at a time and give those out if you want.
There's no other group me talk. We will continue on. So next up, we are going to do some Teams training, Teams workshop, show you a little bit about Teams. So let me pull that up. All right. So let me share my screen. All right, so if we go to Teams, you can see these are all my teams. So we are all part of the UNG SI Facilitator team. So here on like our post page, you can see we may post some announcements. If you have any questions, like Mary posted a question, this is a great place to post questions so everybody can see your question, everybody can see the answer, we can all help each other, put in input, that kind of thing. What most people are going to be interested in is this Files tab. So if you go to the Files tab, and here you have any fall 2021 related stuff. So Sarah started our admin training videos in there. We have our photos, wrong photos. We have our team pictures as our photos for the Instagram raffle contest thing. And then I also put in our fall 21 manual earlier today. We have our calendar. So I'll go ahead and talk about this. So the big thing with Teams is that when you open a document, it's like, cool, love this. Like, this is my document. I can just start making changes, right? So if I add another smiley face right here, it's like, cool, because this is mine. I'm gonna make it mine by adding a smiley face, right? Well, when I close out of the document, you will see it says like modified by Andrew King a few seconds ago. So that means like those changes saved for everybody. So if you want to use a document, what you'll do is I like to just click these three dots and then hit download. And it should automatically go to downloads wherever that's at on your computer. And like once you open that, that should be good. A lot of times on my personal laptop, it'll like download, but it'll kind of put up a little exclamation point under files. So if you're like, oh, I downloaded it and it showed it's right here, if you open it, like that's still the file that everybody uses. So don't use it from your files part on Teams. Hope that makes sense. So yeah, that's why. So that's essentially like how to download files. In our general SI materials, I've started doing session worksheets and resources. So we have our C6 strategy and session strategies. I've gotten some biology 1107 worksheets and stuff up there so far. I'm going to be working on getting more things up there for everybody. So yes, that is like our team. And then some other fun functions. We have this nice, lovely little chat feature. So if I say like, this was our senior mentor meeting, we had a meeting. And so this is where you can like see all your chats, that kind of thing. You can start a new chat. So you can just search, like if I wanted to chat with Seth, I could chat with Seth Johnson and send him a message of hi. And Seth will get that message. So that's great. So you can use these chats, you can talk to each other. And then another fun thing that we can do is calls. So to make a call, you'll do the same thing as a chat. So if I was trying to call Seth, you can hit Seth, and then you can either like just audio call or video call. If you have like your camera, it's essentially like Zoom meeting, but on Teams. And like, if you wanted to schedule a meeting with somebody, like where you could talk to them like over Teams, if you go to calendar, let's say we wanted to do it for 1 o'clock today, you just hit there, give it a title. You can invite people. So if I was inviting Seth, Seth shows up, and then you can save it and they will get sent an invite. Not going to do that to Seth. So that is a very quick and basic run through of Teams. Any Teams questions or comments, anything I left out? Anything? So our like last kind of thing before